Um, I think part of it is just the reality of our times. I mean, my neighbors and the neighbors of people I serve in my congregation are people of many faiths, different faiths, and there's a natural curiosity and a willingness to engage our neighbors, people that we care about otherwise that don't necessarily share my faith. So that's a piece of it. I think there's a recognition that a lot of the violence in the world at least has the name of religion at its base. And as a Christian who's really concerned about issues of peace, I think it's incumbent on us really to make some of these conversations a priority. So it's both and.
Excellent. Was there an experience in interfaith dialogue that impacted the way that you view or act or think about the world?
It's hard to identify one. I mean, I would say just about every interfaith conversation causes me both to question my own tradition, sometimes claim it more deeply, always opens my awareness to people of other traditions and my own understanding of what those traditions are and the complexity of those traditions and the complexity of the world in which we live. So I can't think of a specific kind of cathartic conversation, but I think just about every time I'm involved in those conversations, something changes.
So it's kind of something that's always been of interest to you, just through the...
Yeah, I mean, I do remember, I don't know whether you specifically call this interfaith conversations, I do remember having conversations with friends as early as middle school, say, who had suffered as a result of their faith within what was a majority Christian environment. And being a Christian, I was both surprised about that and at the same time angered by that. I remember one conversation in particular with a friend who had had pennies thrown at him by other Christians. Stereotyping him according to very harmful stereotypes around Judaism, and the pain that he carried around from that experience, and not only not wanting to participate in something like that, but wanting to be involved in changing my own traditions encounter with Jews and people of many faiths.
Excellent. Are there ways you have been transformed by your experiences in interfaith dialogue?
Many ways. I mean, I'd say probably particularly most recently in this scandal of particularity conversation that I was privileged to be involved in. There's so much of interfaith dialogue that begins with hoping to find what we have in common, and with experiences like I just described, it's totally understandable as to why we as human beings naturally want to find what it is that we hold in common. And I think there's some real value in that. On the other hand, it's been so rich for me to really begin to engage in conversation around difference, with the understanding that when we enter these conversations, we don't need to necessarily change each other in order to live alongside each other. But in fact, maybe understanding more about our differences will help us better understand our own traditions and better live together in ways that are healing and not harmful. So yeah, I'd say I'm always being transformed. There are questions, for example, that Jews bring about my tradition that those of us who are already a part of it wouldn't necessarily think of. And that causes me to look more deeply into the history of my own traditions and the things that we say. I mean, we could pick any topic along those lines, but I'd say absolutely it transforms my thinking about my own tradition and my understanding of others. The moment we had was when one of our presenters, one of our Jewish presenters, asked the Christians, what is it that I can't remember the exact question, but what is it that pains you or that you feel incomplete about the relationship between Christians and Jews? And we kind of went around the table, and the Christians were saying things like, you know, it's painful to be treated as just another Gentile when we are Gentiles who want to be part in some way of the people Israel, and the complexity of what that means to say that, and yet at the same time what it took to create an atmosphere where Christians were able to say that in a way that didn't immediately create a defensive environment, but a real understanding of some of the struggles that maybe the Jews in the room hadn't understood yet. And on the flip side of that, I think too, understanding from the Jewish perspective, you know, the different ways that we come to the conversation. Christians come to the conversation already with wanting to be part of this, you know, we share a piece of our sacred text, our Old Testament, Hebrew Scriptures. Even in the differences that exist there's something shared, there's something that Christians desperately almost want out of the relationship, and that's not necessarily the same. In fact, it's not the same. It's not a parallel kind of thing. So right. I think really getting into the complexities of the differences and their implications for our communities has piqued my interest more in pursuing the conversation. I don't think I've come to any conclusions. I don't think anyone has figured out a miraculous way to change, you know, thousands of years of a relationship that's many times gone like this. But I think it's definitely moved the conversation to a different level, and a level that we need today.
Excellent. I understand that you have a ritual item that you brought to the program this week, and I was wondering if you wouldn't mind sharing its story with us.
Well, it's a little cliche, I know, a Christian carrying a cross, and I wear this in worship just about every week when I lead worship at my church. And I think we were asked to bring a ritual object that's important to us, and this one was given to me after I was arrested and released for protesting the war in Iraq. And the person who gave it to me was a retired African-American minister in Baltimore who's a bit of a mentor to me. And he was one of the leaders of the civil rights movement in this city, and he gave it to me with the words that he felt like I had earned it at this point. So I think about that when I wear it, and I think the place where it connects with my faith, obviously with the cross, but the paradox in the Christian faith between suffering and grace and redemption that sometimes is born out of that suffering. So it's a good reminder to me of His presence and guidance, and of my own kind of the mysteries that are part of my own faith.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.